The call came on a Tuesday. I remember because I'd just gotten back from my Wednesday-Thursday golf routine rescheduled to Tuesday that week. My buddy Hank had a doctor's appointment Thursday, and we'd swap days. I was still in my car in the driveway, shoes off, radio on low, not quite ready to go inside yet. That's the kind of man I am at 63. I need a few minutes between places. My phone buzzed, my son's number. I picked up, Dad. His voice was flat in a way that didn't sound like him. Mom's in the hospital, St. Catherine's. You need to come now. I don't remember putting my shoes back on. I don't remember the drive. I remember the parking garage, fluorescent lights, and the smell of the ER waiting room, antiseptic and old coffee, and my son Nathan standing up from a plastic chair with red eyes and a jaw so tight it looked like it hurt him to breathe. "What happened?" I said. It wasn't a question the way I said it. "They think it was her heart," he said. "They're still running tests." My wife, Donna, was 61 years old and had never had a single cardiac episode in her life. She walked 3 miles every morning. She ate oatmeal. She took her blood pressure medication without being reminded. The idea of her heart failing felt like being told gravity stopped working. I sat down in that plastic chair. Nathan sat next to me. We didn't talk for a long time. Here's what I knew going into that night. Donna had driven down to visit our daughter Celia and Celia's husband Brett in Columbus. She did this every couple of months. Celia lived about 2 hours from us, and Donna liked the drive. She'd call me from the road. We'd talk about nothing in particular, and she'd arrive in time for dinner. This trip was supposed to be 3 days. She left Saturday morning. It was now Tuesday. I hadn't spoken to her since Sunday night. I figured she was busy. Celia and Brett had a new house they were always working on, a project kitchen, a half-finished backyard, and Donna would get swept up in it, painting cabinet doors or picking out light fixtures. That was normal. That was them. What was not normal was getting a call that my wife was in the ICU in Columbus with what the doctors were, at that moment, carefully not calling a heart attack. Nathan had driven down Monday when Donna stopped returning his texts. He was the one who found her. He hadn't told me yet how he'd found her. I asked him in that waiting room. He looked at the floor. "She was at the house," he said. "Brett and Celia's house." "Okay." "She was on the kitchen floor, Dad." I waited. "Brett called it in. He said he found her that way when he came home from work. Said she must have fallen." Something in the way Nathan said made me stop. They let me see Donna around midnight. She was attached to monitors I didn't know the names of, tubes in her arm, face the color of old paper. The nurse said she was stable. She said it like it was good news, and I suppose it was. But standing there looking at my wife of 37 years, looking like that, stable, felt like the most hollow word in the English language. I held her hand. She didn't wake up. I stayed until 4 in the morning, and then Nathan made me go to the hotel across the street. We got 2 rooms. I lay on top of the covers in my clothes and stared at the ceiling. I kept thinking about the words said, the way Nathan had used it. Brett said he found her that way. The doctor spoke to us Wednesday morning. Dr. Anand, a small, precise woman who explained things without talking down to you, which I appreciated. She said Donna's cardiac markers had been elevated, but they were more concerned now with what her blood work was showing. She used words I wrote down on a hotel notepad. Elevated digoxin levels. Toxicology pending. She asked me, carefully, whether Donna had been prescribed digoxin. She hadn't. I knew her medications by heart. Blood pressure. Cholesterol. A low-dose aspirin. That was it. Dr. Annan nodded. She said they were required to notify the police when blood work suggested a possible non-accidental cause. I asked her to say that again. She said it again. I drove to Celia's house that afternoon. I don't know what I was planning to do when I got there. I just needed to move. I'd been sitting in waiting rooms and hospital chairs for 2 days, and I was starting to feel like if I sat still one more minute, something in me would crack apart completely. The house was a colonial on a quiet street in a subdivision called Briarwood. Celia and Brett had bought it 2 years ago. Donna and I had helped with the down payment, $20,000, which was not nothing on a pension and a part-time consulting income, but Donna had wanted to. She'd said Celia needed a real start. I pulled up to the curb and turned off the engine. Before I could open the door, someone knocked on my passenger window. I startled. A man was standing there, 50s, heavy set, wearing a Carhartt jacket and holding a travel mug. I'd never seen him before in my life. I rolled down the window. "You Donna's husband?" he said. I said I was. "My name's Ed Kowalski. I live next door." He pointed at the brick ranch to the left. "I need to talk to you before you go in there." I studied his face. He didn't look threatening. He looked like a man who had been rehearsing something difficult. "All right," I said. "Talk." He talked for 11 minutes. I know because I checked my phone afterward and I couldn't believe it had only been 11 minutes. Ed Kowalski had lived next door to Celia and Brett for a year and a half. He worked nights at a warehouse distribution center and slept days, which meant he was often home and awake during hours when most of the neighborhood was out. He had a motion-activated camera system he'd installed after a porch package theft 2 years prior. Not just his porch, but angled to catch the street and the shared driveway edge. He'd seen Brett arrive home Saturday afternoon. He'd seen Donna's car already in the driveway. He'd also seen something that had bothered him enough that he'd saved the footage and gone back and forth for 3 days about whether to say anything. Saturday evening, around 7 p.m., he'd watched Brett walk out to his car, retrieve a small bag from the passenger seat, and go back inside. Not unusual, except that Ed knew Brett's schedule, had waved to him enough mornings over the fence, and Brett's car hadn't been there when Ed had gone to bed at 6 a.m. that morning, and it had been there when he woke at 2 p.m. Brett had told the police he'd been at work until he found Donna Monday morning. That was a 2-day gap Ed couldn't reconcile. He'd also heard an argument Saturday night. Raised voices, Donna's voice, which he recognized from her visits. Another voice, not Celia's, a man's. He hadn't called the police yet because he wasn't sure it meant anything. He'd been going back and forth. He told me this part with the kind of shame a decent person feels when they know they waited too long to do the right thing. I told him it wasn't too late. I asked him to call the detective whose card I had in my pocket, the one Dr. Annan had given me, right now from his driveway, while I sat in my car and waited. He did. I did not go into Celia's house that day. I sat in my car on that curb for 40 minutes while Ed made his call, and then went inside and pulled up his camera system for the detective on the phone. Then I drove back to the hospital. Then I sat with Donna for 3 hours. She woke up briefly around 6 p.m., groggy and confused, and when she saw me, she said my name, Lawrence, in a voice that sounded like she was surprised I was real. I told her I was there. I told her she was safe. I didn't tell her anything else. I didn't sleep that night either. Here's what I need to say about Celia, because I don't want to be the kind of father who tells this story without acknowledging what I have to acknowledge. Celia was our second child. Nathan came first, and then 4 years later, Celia, and she had been, from the time she was small, the one who felt things largest. When she was happy, she was radiant. When she was hurt, she was devastated. She had Donna's laugh and my stubbornness and a competitive streak that had served her well through school and badly in the years after. She and Brett had married 6 years ago. Brett was a salesman, medical devices, good at the performance of confidence without much underneath it. I'd never warmed to him. I'd told myself that was my bias, a father-in-law's reflexive skepticism, and I kept my mouth shut about it for 6 years. Celia and Brett had been in financial trouble for at least 2 of those years. I knew pieces of it: a second mortgage, credit card consolidation, a business venture Brett had described as a sure thing that apparently wasn't. They'd asked Donna and me for money twice. The first time we'd said yes. The second time, 8 months ago, I'd said no. Donna had not been happy with that decision. She felt we should help. I said we couldn't keep helping in ways that didn't actually help. We'd argued about it. quietly, the way couples argue after 37 years. Not shouting, just this low-grade pressure between us that took a few days to release. 8 months ago. I've thought about that timing every day since. The police executed a search warrant on the house on Thursday. They found a partially used box of digoxin tablets in a toiletry bag in the master bathroom. They were not Celia's prescription. They were not Brett's. The prescription label had been peeled off. They found a printed document in Brett's home office, a summary of a life insurance policy. Donna's life insurance policy, the one I'd taken out on her 14 years ago, which I had largely forgotten about, which we both paid into like a utility bill, automatic withdrawal, something you do and then don't think about. The death benefit was $400,000. I did not know that Celia knew that number. I did not know she'd been thinking about it. I didn't know she'd sat across from me at Christmas dinner 2 months ago, knowing that number while I passed her the sweet potatoes and asked about the kitchen renovation. Donna was transferred out of the ICU on Friday. She was coherent and she was angry, which the nurses told me was an excellent sign. I had to tell her. I couldn't not tell her. She would have found out anyway, and I was not going to be the husband who let his wife find out from a detective. I sat next to her hospital bed and I told her. She was quiet for a long time afterward, a long time. The monitors beeped. Somewhere down the hall a cart rattled by. Then she said, "Brett," not Celia. "Brett. Celia wouldn't have thought of this herself," she said. "The insurance policy. She doesn't even know what we have. She never asked." I didn't say anything. "He put her up to it," Donna said. Her jaw was set. "I'm not saying she's innocent. I'm not saying that. But he targeted her. He's been targeting her for 6 years. I don't know if she was right. I've gone back and forth on it. I think the truth is somewhere uncomfortable, that Celia made choices, real ones, that she let something grow in her that should have been stopped, that the love she claimed to have for us didn't protect us when it should have. And I also think Brett looked at our family and saw a resource to be managed and worked on our daughter for years until she could do something like this. Both things can be true. I've learned that. Brett was arrested on a Friday, 11 days after Donna had been found. Celia was arrested the same day. Nathan called me when it happened. He was in the parking lot of his office, voice careful and contained, and he told me, and then neither of us said anything for a moment. "You okay?" he finally asked. "No," I said. "Yeah," he said. "Me neither." The weeks that followed were the strangest of my life. Not the worst. The worst was those first nights in the hospital, not knowing if Donna was going to wake up, not knowing what had happened to her, sitting in a plastic chair in Columbus with bad coffee and no answers. This was different. This was the kind of strange that feels almost administrative. Lawyers, detectives, a victim advocate from the DA's office who was very kind and very young and clearly didn't know what to say to a 63-year-old man whose daughter had tried to kill his wife. We got a family counselor. Donna insisted on it. She said she wasn't going to let this dissolve us. Nathan handled more than I did in those weeks. He was the one who dealt with the estate planning attorney because, yes, we updated our documents, changed beneficiaries, did all the things you're supposed to do and think you'll never actually need. He was the one who organized the practical pieces while I was still trying to absorb the emotional ones. I am not a man who talks about his feelings easily. 37 years of marriage has made me better at it than I was at 25, but I still tend towards silence when I'm hurt. Donna knows this. The counselor was patient with it. There's a detail I keep coming back to. I keep coming back to it because I can't decide what to do with it. About 3 weeks after the arrest, Celia sent me a letter. Handwritten, 5 pages. I recognized her handwriting from birthday cards and holiday notes, that looping cursive she'd had since middle school. She did not ask me to forgive her. That's the part that surprised me. I had expected pleading, the kind of letter that's really about the writer wanting relief. Instead, she wrote about what she had done, clearly without minimizing it, and she wrote about Brett, about the years of pressure and manipulation she claimed had brought her to a place she'd never thought she could reach, and she wrote about our mother, about Donna. She said she could still see Donna's face the last time they'd spoken. before. She said she didn't deserve to be believed. She said she was going to have to live with what she'd nearly done for the rest of her life, and that she understood that was the right outcome. Then she asked one thing, not for forgiveness, not for contact. She asked me to make sure Donna knew she was loved by Celia, that the love had always been real, even when Celia's choices had been something else entirely. I folded the letter and put it in the top drawer of my dresser. I've taken it out a few times. I haven't responded. I don't know what the right thing to do with it is. Some days I think about what Donna had said. He targeted her. He's been working on her for years. And I feel something close to grief for the daughter I thought I knew. Other days I think about my wife on a kitchen floor in Columbus, and I put the letter back in the drawer and I close it. Both of those responses are honest. I'm not sure either one is finished. Brett pleaded guilty to charges of criminal poisoning and conspiracy. The DA told us a trial would have been difficult. Evidence was strong, but the defense would have made it long and expensive and re-traumatizing. Brett took a deal, 12 years, eligible for parole in 8. I sat in the courtroom for the plea. He looked smaller than I remembered. That's all I can say about it. Celia went to trial. Her attorney argued diminished capacity, coercive control, a pattern of intimate partner manipulation. The jury was out for 2 days. They convicted her on the conspiracy charge and acquitted her on the poisoning charge itself, the distinction apparently mattering in ways the attorneys explained and I understood intellectually and cannot fully process emotionally. She was sentenced to 4 years. She'll likely serve less. Donna didn't attend either proceeding. She said she had processed what she needed to process in the hospital room with me, and she wasn't going to a courthouse to finish it. I respected that. What I want to say at the end of this, and I've thought about how to say it because I'm not a man who does this naturally, is that the thing I almost lost was not the $400,000. I didn't even think about the money until weeks later when the attorney brought it up in a different context. The thing I almost lost was the person I have eaten breakfast with every morning for 37 years. The person whose voice I can hear from another room and know immediately what mood she's in. The person who still makes me laugh regularly and who is a genuinely better human being than I am and who did nothing to deserve what happened to her except love her daughter unconditionally. Ed Kowalski saved my wife's life. He didn't know that's what he was doing when he saved those camera files instead of deleting them. He didn't know that's what he was doing when he knocked on my car window. He was just a man who paid attention and, eventually, decided that what he'd seen mattered. I brought him a bottle of bourbon the week Donna came home. We sat on his porch for an hour. We didn't talk about any of it. We talked about the Bengals, because it was that time of year. He's a good neighbor. Donna still walks 3 miles every morning. She goes a little earlier now, while I'm still drinking my first cup of coffee on the back porch. And I watch her come back up the driveway and I think, there she is. Still there. That's the whole thing, really. That's all I've got. There she is. I've had a lot of time to sit with all of this. More time than I wanted, honestly. There were weeks after Donna came home when I'd wake up at 3 a.m. and just lie there running the math on how close it came. One different decision. If Ed had deleted those files, if I'd called instead of driven down, if Donna had stayed one more day, and the outcome is something I can't finish that sentence about. What I keep coming back to is not the betrayal. The betrayal is there. It's real. It's going to be there for the rest of my life in some form. But what I think about more is the accumulation. How something like this doesn't happen in a single moment. It happens in dozens of small moments, most of them invisible, spread across years. Brett didn't walk into our family one day and decide to do what he did. He built toward it. And somewhere along the way, Celia let herself be built along with him. That's the part I have to live with. Not just what was done to Donna, but the fact that it grew in my own family like something in a blind spot, and I didn't see it. I'm not saying I should have seen it. I'm saying I understand now that the people who harm us most are rarely strangers. They're the ones we handed a key to. And the question that doesn't have a clean answer is, How do you love people fully while also staying clear-eyed about who they're becoming? I don't think you can always do both. I think sometimes love is precisely what makes you look away from the thing you should be looking at. What Ed did, saving those files, wrestling with it for 3 days, finally knocking on a stranger's car window, that was a small act that required something real. Not heroism, not drama, just a decision to not let himself off the hook. He could have told himself it wasn't his business. Most people would have. He chose to make it his business. And that choice is the only reason I still have my wife. I think about that when I hear people say nothing they do makes a difference. One man, one camera, 3 days of sitting with a difficult decision. That's the whole margin between what happened and what almost happened. Donna is fine. She's more than fine. She's the same person she was before, maybe more herself somehow, like the experience burned off something that didn't need to be there. She doesn't talk about Celia much. When she does, it's with a kind of careful grief, the way you'd handle something fragile and sharp at the same time. I still have the letter in my dresser drawer. I haven't responded. I don't know if I will, but I haven't thrown it away either. And I think that means something, even if I can't say yet what. What I know is this: the measure of a person isn't who they are when everything is going fine. It's who they are when the pressure gets heavy enough that taking the easy way out starts to look reasonable. Brett made one choice in that pressure. Ed made another. Celia made one choice across 6 years of smaller ones. And Donna, lying in that hospital room, first word out of her mouth when she saw me, my name, made the choice to still be here. That's the one that matters most.